You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health Podcast. My guest is Dr. Sharmin Habib. She's the co-founder of a company called Umay Care. The website is umay.care. So, Sharmin, thanks for coming. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's the premise of Umay? What's the company about?
So, Umay Care is it's a consumer wellness company that really started about 5 years ago with the intent to solve a personal problem. So the story actually, if you rewind back, actually started about 10 years ago. I was just finishing up optometry school in Boston, and at the same time, my older brother and our now CEO, Ali, was finishing up his post-engineering degree in an MBA in Holland. So the two of us kind of finished up around the same time. We both meet back home in Edmonton, Alberta, and naturally, Ali comes to see me for an eye exam. And so at that time, I diagnosed him with a condition known as meibomian gland dysfunction. So really long technical term for a set of very common symptoms under what we call digital eye strain. So if your eyes have ever felt itchy, watery, burning, red, kind of dry eyes, especially after using a computer or screen, that's because of the strain it's putting on the oil glands that are found along our eyelid margin. So just to take a step back and give you a bit of context on what all that means, the way we're using digital devices now, we don't really realize the impact that it's having on our eyes and our overall health. And so when it comes to our eyes, what most people don't realize is that when we look into screens, our blink rate reduces by up to 70%. And it's those blinks that help pump out the healthy oil from those glands to protect our tears from evaporating or drying out. So now, if you look at what's happened in the last 10 years since the introduction of the smartphone, the prevalence of this condition has dramatically changed. So, in clinic, we would see patients and diagnose them with these symptoms primarily because of their age. But now, with the amount of screen time rising to 10 hours and 39 minutes a day, we now have patients as young as 4 and 5 year olds coming in with signs of this condition. So the inspiration for Umay really came from the traditional recommended treatment that I suggested to Ali, which was to apply heat. And clinically we know that it's effective because it's going to help melt the oil in those glands and kind of get that natural flow going. But we didn't really have any sophisticated treatments at the time, so I told him literally go home, take a face cloth, put it in hot water in your sink, wring it out, and then put it over your eyes at bedtime every day. So he kind of looked at me and was like, really? And I said, yeah, go home. This is what you got to do. So you can imagine, like, he goes home and he struggles to get the right temperature and the position right, and it's quite a messy application. Like, water is dripping down his face, and he comes back to me, he's like, this is not going to work. And so Ali's engineering background, kind of his hat went on there, and he thought, okay, well, there's got to be a better way to deliver consistent, controlled heat. And so that's kind of where the idea started, and we started looking at, can we create an at-home product with a simple solution that would be effective and really empower patients to do this on their own in an application that they would enjoy doing.
Well, can you say more about the condition? So what happens? What do people notice again? And then what does it do to the person first and then over time?
So what happens is, when we're constantly doing this, focusing on screens and not blinking enough, the actual oil gland is not able to release a little bit of oil that actually protects our tears. So if you imagine like leaving a can of paint open, right? The top layer of that paint is going to start to create this kind of hard, crusty surface. And so that's what's happening on the surface of our eyes. And so you start to experience like itchy, watery, burning, red, dry eyes. And a lot of people kind of attribute that to just kind of being tired at the end of the day or, looking at a screen all day, but don't really realize that, by not blinking enough, we're not allowing that oil from our gland to release and protect the tears. So when we apply heat at a therapeutic level for a consistent amount of time, so the recommended time is about 10 minutes a day. What we're doing is we're melting that oil in that gland to a nice consistency similar to olive oil, so that naturally when we're blinking, we're restoring the natural tear film on our eyes and protecting them from drying out. So what the device does is we're able to consistently deliver that therapeutic heat for the right amount of time and offer relief that is also preventative and a good management for people who kind of suffer from this chronically.
So the oil is the tears, or the oil just lubricates the eyeball? What's the point of the oil?
So we can go a little more granular into the anatomy of the eye. So if you look at the tear film, there's actually 3 different layers. There's a mucin layer, an aqueous or watery layer, and then a lipid layer. So the mucin layer is the one that kind of adheres the tear to the surface of our eye. The aqueous layer is the watery layer delivering nutrients and moisture. And then the lipid layer is the most superficial layer. So that layer is the one that's going to protect the other 2 from evaporating. And that's the layer that is produced when we're blinking. So when we're not blinking, we're not getting that protective coating there.
So so the mechanism for us is when we blink, what happens? Our eyelid, like, is a windshield wiper that smooths this. Does it take an oil droplet and smooth it over the eyeball?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can imagine, like, with the little bit of pressure that comes from our eyelids closing together, that is actually squeezing out a little droplet of oil. And then with our blink, as we close the eyes and open them again, you can almost imagine that window has become nice and clear again, and covered with that surface of protective oil on the surface of our eye.
Weird. Okay. I never knew this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Where is the gland located? Is it in the corner of the eye, like where you pick out eye boogers, or where is it?
So yeah, interesting. People kind of notice that crusting in the mornings and stuff because those glands are kind of blocked and not kind of flushing things out overnight. But yeah, we have about 75 of those glands. There's 50 on the top lid and 25 on the bottom. And so they're almost, you can imagine where your eyelash line is. Directly behind that, there's these tiny, tiny little follicles along the eyelid margin that line the surface. And that's where they're located.
And why does blinking prevent them from drying out? The action of blinking, what does it do to, is it just, it stimulates the gland to release a tiny bit so it doesn't get stopped up and hardened?
Exactly, yeah. So that's like on average, I mean, with the blink rate reducing by 50 to 70%, that's significantly going to reduce the amount of oil that's going to get squeezed out of those glands. So if you look at the anatomy of the gland, it's almost like a tube, and it has this kind of supply of oil, you could say, that's meant to release, and it's reproduced. And with a healthy tear film and healthy gland, it's going to have a consistency of an olive oil. But when people are not blinking enough, looking at screens at 11 plus hours a day, that oil is not getting released. It's backing up into that tube and it's starting to thicken and get backed up. So in some patients, we'll see that consistency start to become very cloudy and thick, almost like toothpaste, where we'll physically kind of push on the lid a little bit and see, what happens when we try to squeeze out some of the oil. And it becomes so thick that those glands are not releasing, enough moisture on the eye, that eventually they can start to atrophy and die off. And, this is kind of the point where we want to start educating people about, their eye health. Like, we look at the way that we're consuming technology now, about 80% of that is just through our vision and our eyes. We brush our teeth twice a day, but we never really think, what are we doing to help, take care of our eyes and our eye health.
What happens while we sleep? If we're sleeping for 8 hours, what's our eye doing?
Yeah, so when we're sleeping, because the eyelids are closed, we're protecting that tear film, right? But what happens in some patients is that some people sleep with a slightly incomplete lid closure. So sometimes they're getting that dryness even overnight because the cornea is slightly exposed to air. And, if you also look at the amount that we're sleeping and how little we're doing of that more and more, about 90% of us will put our phone down up until the last minute before falling asleep. And the first thing we do is we look at our phone, right? So if you look at the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep that we're getting, it's most definitely having an effect on our eyes as well.
So if you if you're not blinking much, this stuff is hardening. Then you look at your phone and you go right to sleep. Now your eye is still not in a state where you're cycling the oil. It's just kind of sitting there overnight.
Yeah.
So without heat, that probably makes it maybe worse. I don't know.
And that's why we kind of suggest it as a daily routine. One, because we need an application where we can at least get effective heat. Like this face cloth that I suggested to Ali was a step in that direction. But, when you heat up a face cloth, you're going to get heat loss immediately, and you're not going to be able to get appropriate contact, and just the application is not effective enough. So that's why it's become more of a routine. And with Umay, we started to look at, we're not just solving a problem where we have these blocked oil glands, we have to also address the user experience and the user compliance. If you talk to an optometrist or an ophthalmologist and you say, what's the biggest complaint you have when you recommend warm compresses to your patient, and almost 100% of the time they'll say that patients aren't compliant. So when we looked at, developing a product that people would actually want to use and be effective, we had to also look at the routine and how this would integrate into a daily habit for people. And that really kind of inspired the design that you see, and, the way that we talk about the bedtime routine and how we go to sleep and not just how much we sleep. And, talking about the screen time and some of these other environmental effects that are starting to contribute to the effect that we're seeing on our health, that all became a real big part of the solution in educating people. So they really understand what role this plays. Like, the device is one part of the solution, but it's really about understanding, and questioning some of these questions about, how are we consuming technology? What are we doing for self-care? How are we actively disconnecting from, everything that we're consuming more and more in our day-to-day?
So what is it about screens that reduce your blink rate? What physiological mechanism besides, or in addition to, lubricating the eyeball does blinking do? Is there anything else? And why does the blink rate reduce with screens?
It's just our kind of adaptive ability. Like when we're focused on something, we want to consume and take in as much as we can, right? It's just our brain's ability to be able to take in information. And so we kind of push those limits, and we do that because we want to take in more. So naturally our tendency to blink becomes less because we don't want to miss anything. Like people talk about FOMO, or that fear of missing out. It's a real thing, and you see it in terms of in the eyes, and also in terms of sleep, like how little we pay attention to, how much time we need to go to bed at night to kind of restore things. And so the same thing happens with our eyes, is that we just don't want to lose our focus, so we keep staring and not blinking.
You should make a term called phobia, fear of blinking your eyes when you're looking at a screen.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like my son, plays these, the video games and stuff, and they have new monitors that show the game at like 60 frames per second instead of 30, and I wonder if that would modulate if someone blinks or not, the frame rate. Just a thought crossed my mind. I don't know how you'd. I mean, I guess you'd have to test it, but I wonder. Have you seen experiments where, depending upon the brightness of the screen, or the contrast, or the frame rate, or anything, if that modulates how people blink?
Yeah, I haven't, but I have heard more of these questions coming up. Also, in terms of, I think there was just a computer released not too long ago where they're actually integrating. They're trying to eliminate the amount of blue light that's coming from screens, and just the effect of the light behind there. And in terms of the frame speeds, I haven't heard about that, but I'm not surprised. And I think people are going to be looking more and more at some of these things, because I don't think that 11 hours a day of screen time is going to change. If not, it might even go up. But I do think that people are going to find ways to kind of combat that and make it to kind of facilitate our lifestyle as it is, because it's very hard for people to change their habits, right? So we almost look for more ways and more justification for doing what we're doing.
So tell me about the product. What is it like? We're here on audio, so it's, we can't see it right now unless we put it in the show notes. But what does the product look like, and how is it used?
So the product is it's a wireless portable unit. It's something that's kind of shaped like almost like an exaggerated goggle, but it's meant to be placed over the eyes, lying down with your eyes closed at bedtime. So there's no strap. There's a bit of an elongated bridge, but it only has one single button and two little LED lights that kind of deliver feedback to you about what setting you're on and what's going on. So the product has two treatment surfaces that make direct contact with your eyelid, and you would simply push a button and it will cycle you through 3 different settings. The first is called thermal therapy, where it is a consistent amount of therapeutic heat for 7 minutes, and you'll feel the heat kind of slowly ramp up to that therapeutic level. And then at the end of the 7 minutes, it'll automatically shut off. There's also some haptic feedback in there, so you'll hear like a little vibration to tell you that the session is over. So if you are kind of falling asleep while doing this, we've timed it in such a way that, on average, people take about 12 to 15 minutes to fall asleep. The treatment's about 7 minutes. If you do fall asleep, it kind of shuts off on its own. The second setting is thermal cooling. So that one is, so we talked a lot about the digital eye strain and the dry eyes. There's also benefit from applying cold on the eyes when you have allergies, or if you're trying to reduce puffy or inflamed eyes. And so that the device will also deliver a cold compress for about 2 minutes if you wanted that setting. And then the third one is the thermal meditation. And so we were really kind of creative with this setting for a few reasons. We just kind of had people using the product, trying it out, giving us feedback. And some of the things that we started to hear were less about, the symptoms of the digital eye strain, and more about, this feels really relaxing. I could fall asleep. It almost feels like everything around me has gone quiet. And we thought, okay, well, this is almost giving a little bit of a active disengagement or meditative experience for people. And so we pulled on that string a little bit, and we integrated 2 different things to deliver a sensory experience as well as some haptic feedback.
Yeah, what are some of the things you discovered about the product once people started using it?
So what was interesting for us is just kind of hearing what people had to say immediately after having a Umay session. And what we started to notice is they were talking less and less about some of those symptoms that we talked about earlier, like the red, burning, and dry eyes, but they actually really enjoyed the experience. And they started telling us, like, I feel really relaxed, and the heat is really soothing. I could fall asleep. It's almost meditative. So we really started to listen to that and found that, okay, well, maybe there's something more here than just delivering therapeutic heat. So with the third setting, we looked at integrating a meditation experience where we combine two different things, guided breath and a sensory experience. So there's a breathing exercise called 4-7-8, or the relaxation breath. And it's been shown to help with stress and anxiety, helping people to fall asleep. And essentially what you would do is you would inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and then exhale for 8. So what the device will do is they'll deliver very gentle haptic vibrations to guide you and signal you through that breathing cycle a few times, and then it will follow with very minute changes in temperatures between the two eyes. So what happens is our body is able to detect very, very subtle changes in temperature. And so what we do is we vary the temperature very minutely between the two eyes, and we play around with the amplitude of those changes. And the reason we do that is because we want people to become aware of the sensory experience that's going on. So you almost experience this abstract form of heat. And it really draws your awareness to exactly what's happening in that moment. And when we look at meditation and the variety of different ways that people are trying to tap into it, we have the apps, you have guided meditation, you have, focusing on how we walk, how we eat, sound. We really wanted to keep it simple, like everything else with the device. So we just have people focus on this, the sensory experience, and all that is happening within the 7 minutes. And the idea is that you're, one, restoring the natural function of the eyes. You're relaxing your respiratory rate to similar when we're sleeping with the breathing exercise. And now with the sensory experience, we're actually helping you actively disconnect, not using your phone as a last minute before going to bed, but being very mindful and present right before falling asleep.
That makes sense. What about the device itself? You said there's haptic feedback, it vibrates. What about having it vibrate on a program and massaging the eyes, or again, cycling the heat? Maybe that, what does that do to the eyes?
Well, so there's a couple of things we're working on in terms of the final iteration. But yeah, there is some thoughts behind that massage also helping to loosen up some of the oil in those glands to help facilitate the movement and flow through the gland. But again, it's very delicate, that area of the eye and those structures. And so it's about delivering effectiveness, but also being really gentle. And because this is a session and a treatment that we want people to do daily, we're able to deliver that effectiveness in a very subtle and gentle way.
Yeah, you have to be very careful. What about cycling through a series of colors of certain, of certain frequencies of wavelength? Maybe that would do something. I don't know. I mean, even with your eyes closed, you can still see light. If you go through the eyelid, maybe there's something there that you can modulate too.
Maybe that'd be version 2.
Well, like at night, blue light's not supposed to be good for you. Reddish light, orange light is. Maybe you could cycle going from a bluish state to red, rather quickly throughout the 7 minutes. Just like a low level light, and maybe that would do some additional signaling to make the person ready for sleep. Just an idea.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's something definitely worth looking at and interesting. It's a really interesting a time and space in terms of how technology is being integrated into the products we use every day, and yet we want to kind of keep things simple. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I mean, also the reverse. You're having people use it before sleep, but when you wake up, sometimes you don't want to wake up. You put on the, you hit the snooze button, or you want to cover your eyes. Maybe you could do another reverse cycle where you put it over your eyes, you lay there, and it slowly progresses you towards blue light and kind of wakes you up and stimulates you. Maybe that would help you get ready for the day.
Well, we found that some people have actually enjoyed doing, let's say, the cooling in the morning and then the heat at night. Often we're spending so much time on screens all day that they really need some kind of rest and relaxation at the end of the day, so the heat is helpful for that. And then the cooling is kind of perks up the eyes and refreshes them. Or if you have a headache or you're feeling kind of sluggish, it kind of gives you that little jolt to your day. And that's only a 2-minute session, so it gives you a quick way to kind of start.
Yeah, my dad would, if it was hot out, he'd close his eyes and he'd put like a can of Coke against his eye, and he liked it. He said it felt good, so I would try it sometimes, and it does feel good sometimes to have a little cold in your eye. So I guess that's the old school way,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Well, one last question: Why the temperature difference? Why is that important to have it change between the eyes?
For the thermal meditation, because it's something that, so therapeutically we wanted, for when we were addressing the oil gland and the digital eye strain issues, we wanted consistent heat. For the thermal meditation setting, we just use that as a way to communicate with the user and to really signal that something's going on without being very invasive or intrusive during the bedtime routine in terms of guiding the user through a meditative experience. Like, we didn't really want someone talking at you or delivering, loud sounds or anything that might be disruptive when we're just about to fall asleep. So we use temperature variance as a way to communicate and draw the user's awareness to what's happening in the moment.
Okay. Any other unexpected results you've had with the device?
I think the biggest surprise was just the way people were receptive to thermal meditation. I remember the day that Ali came into the office and he said, okay, we're going to add meditation into the device and we're going to call it thermal meditation. And in my head I said, no way, people aren't ready for even hearing the word meditation yet. And, I obviously had my doubts because things have changed, the way that we talk about wellness, the way that we talk about meditation, just some of the stereotypes that initially came with it. But we tried it, and I was really surprised to see, we would set up a trade show booth, and if you walk by our booth, you'd see a blow-up air mattress, kind of made really nice like a bed. And then we'd have our banners saying, reset the effects of screen time with thermal meditation. And people were so intrigued because they understood screen time and they understood thermal, but they wondered what's thermal meditation all about. And so we started telling our story, we started telling people, and it was amazing to see how ready people are to find better ways to improve their self-care, to enhance their day-to-day performance. And, internally we just thought how amazing of an opportunity it is for us to really kind of have an impact on people's day-to-day life with something as simple as a daily ritual that you would do right before going to bed.
Yeah, very cool. So where are you at with the device? Is it commercially available yet, or are you getting close?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are getting close. We're currently going through manufacturing and anticipating shipping our first batch of units at the end of this year. So we're really excited about that, and we'll be doing some beta testing with our first kind of group of users to really learn as much as possible and give people kind of early hands-on experience with the device. So that'll be at the end of this year. And then, just really branching out and seeing kind of the potential of applications of where the product will be. We're getting a lot of interest from both the eye care as well as the wellness communities. But our goal between now and the next 6 months is really just to get it in people's hands and at their bedside.
Yeah, I know you have a lot to do, but I just wonder if people that get laser eye surgery, if this could be modulated to rehab their eyes faster. For people that have other conditions, I wonder if it'll affect their eyes in a positive way. So there's a lot to explore, in addition to this. But so far, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, most definitely. There's a lot of applications. Yeah.
So is there an early sign-up list where people can request it, and you'll let them know when it's ready?
Yeah, most definitely. So currently, if you go to our website, there's a wait list that we're taking, so you can just sign up your name there and kind of stay in touch with us, and we'll give you updates on when we'll be ready to launch and just some information so that we can connect. So you can feel free to just join on the wait list and keep in touch that way.
That's great. Well, Sharmin, thanks for coming. It's a very cool project, and I hope that it has all kinds of amazing positive effects in addition to what you discovered.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great chatting.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.